Welcome to our video on how to work with students with disabilities, specifically with composition. Here, my panel consists of Lauren Litkey, Ariane Ramdi, and Laura Belize. And we will be looking at reimagined clips from a mock tutoring session in which I worked with another student. And we will be getting their feedback and what they think and what they see that could either be worked upon or changed in order to best serve our students.
My professor recommended that I made an appointment with the Learning Center to come see you because he says I have problems with basic structure for my essays.
So what do you think we need to work on? Just overall?
Well, I think, I don't understand what my professor is saying about developing a thesis and then the organization.
Okay, so I guess that's where we'll start. So as you all saw, that is usually what we hear from students when they first come into us. A lot of times they're feeling dejected about their writing. They've been told some pretty negative stuff about their writing. So what, in your experiences, since you all work with students with disabilities, what have you seen when your student first comes to you?
Well, the confidence is always a really big issue for a lot of our students, and a lot of times they are really good writers or they have the skills that they need, they just don't have, they're not sure of themselves and they don't have that sense of confidence. So a lot of times they just work on just really seeing their writing and asking them what they feel about it and explaining that people have different writing styles or different learning styles and it's okay just to develop that further.
So tell me a little bit about what you want to work on, because a lot of times when I have a student come in, I kind of lead the session, but I feel like you kind of have a better idea of what you want to do. So tell me a little bit about what you want to do.
Well, when it comes to writing essays, I think I have a problem narrowing my focus. Like I try to tackle way too much.
Right, and a lot of students do that.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess if you could help me figure out how to zero in on my thesis and really just have a strong first page of my paper, I think that could help me organize the rest of it.
So what are some of the ways you go about that? I mean, what have you been taught in the past?
Well, I'm more of a visual learner, so I like making, like sort of like a web of ideas that I have and write them down before I start, so I have something I could visually see in front of me, so I can...
Right, like you have on your paper. That's great.
Exactly. This is what I have generally done in the past, and that really works for me, but my professor is more rigid in his style, and I don't really understand where he's coming from.
So is it a situation where your thesis isn't maybe getting across what your professor feels it should be getting across?
I think that's the problem, yeah.
In that second portion of the session, we saw more specifics of what students tend to struggle with, thesis statements, organization, just getting their ideas out. What are some of the ways that you all get students to kind of get their ideas out, and how do you organize someone's thoughts who may just, never really had experience with it?
It depends on the student, on how they like to learn. Like some students like to do bubble mapping, and others just like to do a straight outline. But either way, that's usually where I would start working with them to get their ideas there. It also helps with making sure, with the organization, as far as making sure that everything relates to the topic that they're talking about.
Julie Neff describes learning disabled students as students who need a different, more specific kind of collaboration than the average student who walks through the doors of the Writing Center. How true do you find that statement to be?
I feel that it's important to, again, assess what they feel, like what level they feel they're at, and seeing what they want to improve upon.
Maybe it's just a matter of breaking it down, like what Laura mentioned earlier with working with students, breaking it down, and so it's like it helps build confidence too, and seeing that, hey, you know, the assignment isn't that tough after all. It's just you have to, sometimes you see so much on paper that it's overwhelming, but it's about a matter of just breaking it down and just, you know, making the steps a little bit easier. Sometimes if we overthink things, you know, we tend to, even with writing, if we overthink it, sometimes it makes it tougher for us. And part of building confidence is is letting the student know that, hey, it's doable.
And now let's take a look at the next session.
So I see that you're writing a paper on Alfred Hitchcock's movies, and you know, the beginning's really great. The only thing I see that you may have a problem with is that you're trying to tackle a lot. So maybe we can hone it down to maybe just the aesthetics. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that there's even a lot to talk about just in his aesthetics. That would probably really help me focus my paper. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, so tell me some things about the aesthetics that he uses, because I think maybe if we just kind of go off of that instead of just, you know, let's just talk about the paper.
So, again in the video, I kind of discuss, you know, with the student that I like to talk about the paper more than I actually like to sit down and watch them, you know, pen out a sentence, because a lot of times if the student can actually verbalize what they want to say, they can oftentimes put it into their own words, or possibly, you know, get that paper going in the direction that they actually really need to get it in a more organized and focused way. So what do you use?
If you're having them write the paper with you there, sometimes it's difficult to not put words into their mouth, and you don't want to like be a crutch for them. So it's better to sort of just get them thinking about it than it is to sit and write with them. But some students you kind of do. Like I have a student where part of her process is literally just having me sit there while she writes stuff.
And how do you feel about that?
I mean, it's good for now, just getting her started, but eventually I'm going to start getting her away from needing me to be there.
Regina Richards states that though students may struggle with organizing their thoughts while writing, consequently learning disabled students frequently submit work that is either brief or difficult to read. And I know from my personal experience, I have seen some drafts that don't necessarily always resemble the usual draft that most students turn in. And a lot of times invention seems to be a major problem with students, especially students with disabilities, coming up with things to say. So as Regina Richard puts it, how do we help our students elaborate?
I had introduced him to the idea of like using a digital recorder and for lectures, and then, you know, we thought about, hey, why not use that for writing too? Because again, going back to the idea that writing is a process, and sometimes it's just a matter of like collecting your thoughts and getting ideas out. And so sometimes, you know, my student would have the recorder on, and you know, they would start talking about, you know, whatever concepts they want to include into their paper, and that's just the brainstorming process for a particular individual.
Let's take a look at the next clip.
How'd you do on that paper?
I actually did really great on it.
Awesome.
I got my first 95 in that class. So.
Awesome. That's really good. So tell me a little bit about like what's changed. Like how, you know, are you more confident when you write? You know, tell me what's going on.
Well, yeah, I'm more focused when I write. I'm definitely more confident now that I've got my first 95. I think that's really going to at least let me know I can succeed in this class. And also I've been paying attention to focusing my ideas rather than trying to take on too much and having a paper that jumps around too much. I've realized that you really have to hone in on one idea and go with that and find several examples of what I'm trying to prove.
Awesome. Well, I'm really proud of you, and you know, keep bringing those papers and we'll keep on working on them.
Great.
So when our students come into us and they actually did improve vastly, you know, it is very much like what was depicted there. But, you know,
it's keeping that momentum going. So how do we keep momentum and the confidence going with our students is a lot of times really important, especially with students with disabilities, because as we all know, one poor outing or one poor showing on a test or an essay can really, bring them right back down to where we started. So how do you keep the momentum going?
I'll talk with them about what they did that worked and like how that worked, and we can talk about how to incorporate it into other things that they're doing. And so, just making sure that they remember it. Sometimes like we'll make a list of all the things that they do that works for them.
I think it's really important to recap what progress the students made. So having them verbally express how they've seen themselves develop, seen their writing or whatever it is they're working on kind of grow, and them saying it themselves will greater increase their confidence because they're acknowledging what they've done.
Here's another question. What allows you to form a bond with a student in a short amount of time? Because I know a lot of people just work in a writing center, or they're professors, or they may not be aware that the student themselves has a disability, but for one reason or another they may suspect it. And not always a student is going to reveal that they do have a disability. But what advice would you give someone who suspects a student may have a disability and is lacking confidence in their writing? What kind of suggestions would you give to improve that student's confidence?
I like to pick out the things that they're doing right. Even if it's a bad paper, there's something in there that they're doing well, even if it's just getting an idea onto the page. And sort of even any little amount of positive reinforcement will keep them from sort of seeing you as an enemy who's going to point out everything they do wrong, versus a peer who's there to help.
Writing isn't easy. I mean, it's just, we're all at a different level, all at a different stage of the writing process, and so, it's a matter of like how much work you're going to put into it, and, it just takes time, and I think it's just letting the student know that, and letting them know that, hey, it's okay to make mistakes, and just to figure out, okay, what's the next step, how can we improve, and just go from there. And so it's just like, a matter of, again, going back to, their strengths.
I want to thank you all for your time. As I know, it is very valuable, and everything that was said today, I believe is going to help other people in the future, especially who watch this video, will have an idea of how to better work with students with disabilities.